Welcome everybody. We're back with another episode of the Even Your Dynasty show. We have Dan and Ricky here today, and we got some big news. Kind of got leaked yesterday by Bobby Valentine of all people, and then confirmed by Bob Nightingale and everyone else. But Zack Minasian is the new GM of the San Francisco Giants, the 11th in San Francisco Giants history. Posey got his guy. So we're going to just hop right into that here in a second. But how are you guys doing tonight?
Good, man. Can't complain.
Yep.
We'll have lots to talk about for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have people filtering in here. Give them a second. But I'll kick to you guys, or actually here, I'll give a little bit of a background on Zack Minasian, and then I'll kick it to you guys for your thoughts that way while people are kind of jumping in here. But for those of you that don't know him, he's 41 years old, has been with the Giants since 2019, been the pro or VP of pro scouting since 2022. Prior to that, he was with Milwaukee for 14 years, variety of different roles, including 6 years as their scouting director. At the time, he was the youngest scouting director in baseball. That was under Doug Melvin. And then when Stearns came over, Stearns put a guy that he wanted in place there. And he served a whole bunch of different roles, such as like he was a baseball operations analyst and, personnel coordinator to pro scouting and all sorts of different stuff. But he was there for 14 years, has a brother, Perry, who is the Angels general manager. So they're the first brothers to ever be GMs at the same time. It's kind of interesting. He's Tommy Lasorda's godson, which I found kind of funny. And Lasorda called him Benedict Arnold after going to the Giants, which, hey, I mean, whatever. And his dad was a clubhouse manager for Texas for like 2 decades. So he was been in a major league clubhouse since he was a kid, basically. So pretty interesting background for him. So I'll kick it to you guys. I'll get your guys' thoughts to start. I have a whole kind of list of stuff with him, but I'll let you guys kick it off for this.
Rick, I'll let you start.
Yeah, so I mean, my initial thoughts were, I was pretty surprised that they decided to go with somebody internally. He's definitely not somebody we really heard anything about leading up to the announcement. So it was definitely kind of a shock for me. I was initially a little bit disappointed just because I would have liked to see a fresh face in there, some new ideas, a new outlook on things. Obviously he hasn't been with the organization for too long, so we don't really have a great idea of what we're getting in him yet. But after doing a little bit more research into him, I'm definitely, I've got to keep an open mind and see how he does. I pretty much trust anything Posey's doing at this point. He's been around, so he kind of knows the front office pretty well at this point. So I definitely think that, based on how the last couple of drafts have gone, that might be something to look forward to. And his scouting background is definitely something that was encouraging for sure, because I think we had talked about it a lot. That's something we all kind of really wanted to see in this new GM coming in.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think initially, when the news first broke, I felt very similar to how a lot of Giants felt, where it was just kind of like, what? Like, what is it seemed kind of like a underwhelming decision at first. Which, like you guys kind of attested to, would have been nice to get like an external, presence in to, kind of chime in and break away that, that Farhan chain command, so to speak, that a lot of fans, myself included, kind of, wanted to get away from. But, after doing a little bit of digging over the last day and with you guys chiming in as well, I mean, this dude has like 14 years with the Brewers plus, last 5 years with us. And the Giants put a post out today and I did a little bit of digging into it. And I mean, he played a role in getting like CC Sabathia, Zach Greinke, Carlos Gomez, Josh Hader, a lot of those types of talents. So it's like clearly he's got an eye for talent. Clearly the drafts for the Giants have been, improved tremendously since he became the scouting director back in 22. So he's obviously got the experience. He's obviously, finessed and worked out some trades. He's obviously got an eye for talent. So, and it's going to be, a seamless transition with him already having that relationship with Posey. So, was it any of our, first choices? No, I don't think any of us had him on our radar, but the move makes sense. And, I hope for the best.
Yeah. I think we all had the same feelings as far as hiring an internal candidate. I know, Dan, you kind of mentioned it yesterday through some different, posts and stuff, that we felt like if they were going to go internal, it kind of just made sense to keep Patilla in the role. Which I would have agreed that, I would have agreed with that general thought. But yeah, looking into more about Minasian's background, I come away pretty impressed. And I have a whole list of like different pros and cons with him. And the cons are mainly things like, it's kind of the Zaidi stench, and you're not setting yourself up to have a lot of fan patience. Luckily, it is Posey making this decision. It's not, they moved off Zaidi and Posey never took over, and they just said, all right, we're giving it to this guy. I think that there would have been a lot of backlash with that move if they did something like that. And the only other thing with the experience for him, like as far as his background goes, is he does have a scouting background, but if you kind of dig in on it, it's all pro scouting. Like, so he's done almost entirely scouting of the majors, minors, and independent leagues. Like, he has very little amateur scouting in his background. So as far as drafts go, it does make me believe they're going to have to rely a lot on Michael Holmes, and we'll see what kind of role Pete Patilla is going to be in. Maybe they're going to put him in some kind of an amateur scouting role. I know Michael Holmes is technically the director right now, which he's a name that's been out there a lot, and I feel a lot of Giants fans aren't a fan of his, but then you look and he's only been the scouting director, the amateur scouting director, since 2022. So it's like, okay, the drafts have been pretty decent since 2022. So maybe Michael Holmes isn't that bad, who knows? But he is going to probably have to rely a lot on those guys, which is fine because, as Dan mentioned, he has a lot of history as far as big trades. And I would imagine with how long he has been in pro scouting directing positions and in those kinds of roles, this guy is going to have an idea about the value of both his players and other players around the league. And it could lead to a guy that is way more active on the trade front than we saw with Zaidi, is kind of how I view it. So a lot of history. I like that his background includes time under Doug Melvin as well as under David Stearns and Zaidi. So this is a guy that's been in clubhouses his whole life. He understands the dynamics of clubhouse. He's been in old school and more analytically driven environments. He's had success in both. I have to always remind, like myself included, as well as everyone else, where it's like, just because he worked under Farhan Zaidi doesn't make him Farhan Zaidi. So like we all got to just give him a fair shot. And he could have, I don't think anybody really knows exactly his philosophy, like how down the rabbit hole with analytics he is. But I have a feeling that Buster Posey would not have hired him if he was just like 100% reliant on analytics. I have to just put my faith in Buster on that one. So those were kind of my notes on that. I feel like he fit the front office, like what Posey described, though, as far as wanting a guy that understands clubhouse dynamics and things like that with his background. And as Dan mentioned, with his, relationships and the familiarization with the internal front, everyone in the front office currently, there's going to be very little, getting acclimated for him. He's going to probably be pretty comfortable with everybody, and hopefully they can just hit the ground running.
Yeah, he's got 19 years of experience total in the big leagues. So, so it's like, it's not that he's, the way that I look at it, I think he brings a nice element because he was around a lot more for like that older school transition into the new school. theme and style that we see nowadays with it shifting to the analytical ways. So hopefully he can kind of bring like that nice in between balance of new school and old school. Plus, like he said, I think you hit on the nail with that relationship that he has, making trades, working out negotiations with other teams and, eyeing to how it's like the names that I mentioned earlier. So like I say, it probably wasn't a popular pick. It isn't a popular pick. It's not one that anybody saw coming. But once you actually kind of look into the move a little bit more, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and to go back on what Cody was saying as far as him not being, too heavy on analytics as, in comparison to some of the other candidates that were out there. I definitely would be surprised as well if that's the way he started operating in this new role, just because, literally everything we heard Posey saying leading up to this, that's not at all what he was looking for. He kind of wanted a balance of both. And I know a lot of fans out there after Farhan got fired were very concerned with Posey going very far in the other direction. That doesn't seem like the case either. So I definitely think it's something we just got to keep an open mind on and give him the same level of patience that we gave Farhan over the last 6 years.
Yep. You guys all know I'm very big on, I give a guy 3 years when it's an exec. And I saw an interesting nugget that they gave him a 3-year deal, which isn't always the case with a new GM like that. I know baseball, there's a lot of tendency with executives and coaches to basically be on like running 2-year deals. And then they like extend them a year every year, and they very rarely go in to like lame duck seasons. They matched him up to Posey's contract. They gave him a 3-year deal. So they feel pretty comfortable with him. So, and another nugget, we all mentioned that he wasn't really on our radar. Well, apparently, according to Buster Posey in his video call that he did like an interview with the reporters. Posey said he wasn't even on his list. He was a guy that basically he's so well respected around the league and from different senior advisors and everything when he was compiling his candidates. Everybody kept telling him, you got to look at this guy. And, it's as they say, like the most unacceptable person in this is the one that's in your own backyard and under your nose. So they did. And it sounds like he just impressed him every single time. So, if he's good enough for Buster, as far as I'm concerned, he's good enough for me going forward. And hopefully he proves everyone right. I hope he crushes it because I know yesterday I was pretty underwhelmed and, shame on me for not spending a little more time before reacting on that one, because the more I dig, the more impressed I am with his background. And like Dan mentioned, in his time with Milwaukee, they traded for Sabathia, they traded for Greinke and traded Greinke. They traded for Carlos Gomez, and then they turned around and flipped Carlos Gomez later on. They almost traded Gomez for Wilmer Flores and Wheeler. For those of you wondering, that is the famous Wilmer Flores crying on the Mets meme. Then when that trade fell through, they turned around and flipped Gomez for Josh Hader. And then they got like Segura, Will Smith. Feel like I'm forgetting someone, but yeah, tons of big time trades that he was involved in. And then he was with Milwaukee, I believe, still when they made the Yelich trade, although I don't know how, involved in that he was. So pretty impressive.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see how Posey shapes the rest of the front office. We're going to dive into it some more, but a lot of moves are starting to be made internally as far as the coaching staff. We'll dive into all of that, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of advisors Posey brings in, how he shapes his inner circle and whatnot. But the pieces are starting to kind of fall into place. So it'll be an interesting next couple of weeks, fellas.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just another thing to add on to the trade history with the new GM, it's really huge to consider when we think back to Farhan's tenure and how really there were hardly any major trades made other than the half season of Chris Bryant. Other than that, you really don't think of Farhan and making these massive trades. And something I brought up to you guys off the channel during the World Series was look at the Dodgers roster. Everybody talks about them being this, very stable organization with a ton of homegrown talent. And it's like, no, not really. when you really look at the core of their roster, it's yes, they have signed some big free agents, but a lot of it is swinging huge trades with those top prospects that they have included and getting guys that are, franchise type players in their prime and getting rid of guys when their prospect status is at their absolute peak and selling high on these guys. And it's not about just trading for these guys that are already in their 30s. It's, you have a chance to go get a generational type player like Mookie Betts or Freddie Freeman. You go out and do it and sell on your prospects while their status is high. So I think that's a big thing that our front office was missing over the last 6 years. And it's something I preached over and over when people were complaining that, hey, we have to do everything through the draft because we can't bring in big time free agents. Well, no, there's other ways to build out a roster and get, big time veteran players in here, especially when we're talking position players.
Yeah, I think you just hit it on the nail because we have to kind of accept the reality for what it is. And it was on X, I forget which podcast it was on, but where it was mentioned like the Giants, they obviously haven't been an attractive destination for free agents. And this offseason, they still probably won't be super attractive to start free agents. You got to construct this roster and make it a good team before you can try to pursue some of these, big name stars. And the best way to go about that right now is, like you said, you make trades to construct your roster. So I think it's huge because, like Cody has emphasized for months now, Farhan was too scared to, make a big move. He was too scared to make a bold accusation. Like, yeah, he did the 4 months of Chris Bryant, womp womp, whatever. But just in general, I think making a move like this for a GM that kind of has a history with specializing in trades is going to be massive for when you're trying to construct a roster to make it a desirable destination for, big time star power.
Yeah. Have you guys seen the movie Take Me Home Tonight? It's going to be kind of random. It's like an old Topher Grace, not old, but it was like 2010 or 2011. It's got like Topher Grace and Anna Faris and Chris Pratt before he was super famous. And
I was not expecting that question, Cody.
Yes, I know. This is random. At the end, for anybody that's seen it, at the end of the movie, like he doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. And his dad's like basically like fakes arresting him because his dad's a cop. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm such a failure. And his dad's like, well, you're not a failure. You haven't even tried. And he's like, well, I don't know where to begin. He's like, well, take shots, wild shots, shoot it everywhere. Sometimes it's just something to hear the gun go off. The Giants have not heard the gun go off in forever. Take a shot. That's all we've been asking for forever. So, yeah, super random reference, but yes, that it was applicable to this.
Farhan had a little Dollar Tree squirt gun.
Yeah,
that was his gun going off.
Yeah, he's like, ooh, Donnie Walton. Next year, ooh, another Donnie Walton.
Hey, dude, we waved him and he came back. I texted you guys today. Donnie Walton's like a cockroach, bro. He won't go away.
Dude, I was this close. If I had more time, I was gonna Photoshop a cockroach on Donnie Walton's head and like make his head. Yes, and I was gonna wait for you to mention it. And I was gonna be like, boom.
That's hilarious.
God. No, but yeah. No, I mean, you guys are dead right though. Like there's really 4 ways to acquire talent. If you think about it, you can draft them, you can sign them, you can trade for them, and then and I kind of copying out the 4th. It's the international market because they have the international signings. The Giants are so far behind in 3 of those. They're not developing great now. I mean, I'd say they're maybe middle of the pack because they do have quite a bit of young talent up right now. But they don't sign anybody. They haven't been trading anybody. And the international market is the only spot where they've actually made pretty big strides. So you've known you're not an attractive destination for free agents for a long time. So there's 2 solutions. You either start paying way more money for these guys to get them to come, which they have refused to do at the top of the market, or you trade for them. And they've shown in the past a bunch of times that once they get the guys in the building, they love it here. And they can usually re-sign them. It's just getting those guys in the door. That's the problem when it's an open market and they have options to go play elsewhere. So, yeah, I'm all for it. Go make some trades. I think they will, but, we'll see. So.
I think another thing we can take away from this new GM hire too is possibly seeing a more cohesive front office. Something we kind of heard rumblings around after the Farhan firing was that he kind of was taking control over a little bit of everything and not really taking in others' opinions as much. And I think when you look at this hire and him being somebody who specialized in pro scouting and being active on the trade market, I think you could see a clear role of him being very active on that front, and then Posey being a lot more active on the trying to bring in big time free agents and being more involved in that side of things. And then you still have Holmes running the draft, and then we haven't really touched on it too much yet, but Pete Patilla is still being around too. We don't even know what his role yet or is going to be yet, but when he was back with Houston, he was very involved on the international free agent market. So going and scouting guys like Lee last year and the year before that, leading up to the Giants signing him, we could see him going back into a role like he had with the Astros and hanging around. And then you look at it from that standpoint, and like you said, there's 4 clear ways to acquire talent. And just right there, you could have 4 guys in very clear roles and everybody kind of just working together, something the Giants haven't really had while under the Farhan regime.
100%.
Yeah, they've got the makings of a potentially really solid front office. I mean, we all joke about Jeremy Shelley, but if he's getting to stay in his lane, like, I don't think anybody's got an issue with it if he's going to be more involved in negotiations and things like that. It's just, unfortunately, when it comes down to the free agency side of things, it's going to have to be an ownership commitment. Like, it's going to have to be a directive. And, Posey still is a minority owner in the club. I think that he owns like 4 to 5% or something like that at the club. Like, maybe he can be a direct link and he can just be like, guys, we gotta, when guys like, Soto are out there, he's going to have to be like, we're going to put out the biggest offer because, not that I think he's coming, but you listen to him talk and it seems pretty clear that he's going to the highest bidder. He doesn't care.
Hey, I'm not trying to put that glimmer of hope, and obviously we'll talk about this in the next episode, but John Heyman did come out today and say that, hey, Soto just wants the bag. He just wants the biggest contract. He doesn't care where he goes, essentially. But at the same time, Boris client. So we'll get all into that in a later episode.
Yeah. I mean, he's got an ego. I think we all know that.
Yeah, of course.
And if you hand him, it's not going to be the same, average annual value or anything as an Ohtani. But if you hand him more dollar bills than Ohtani, even if it's over longer years, it's an ego thing for guys. If they can be able to say, I signed the biggest contract in pro sports history. Yeah. So is he worth it? I don't know. He'd be worth it to the Giants, in my opinion, but that's a different story.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into that another day.
Yeah. So anybody has any questions on our thoughts on Minasian, just throw them in there. We're gonna skip over to Veely. We're gonna do some chat talk towards the tail end of this. So
you guys want to mute me when we start talking Veely. You do not want me to go.
I had a fun interaction on Veely yesterday.
Oh yeah, I saw.
God. But yeah, so for those of you that haven't heard, I don't think anything's official yet. But it's sounding like Justin Veely is going to go ahead to Texas, and
it's official.
Probably be an assistant hitting coach. Is it official now?
Yeah, I mean the ball club hasn't announced it, but I think what was it? It was either Nightingale or Heyman or one of them announced it.
They did. Okay, I must have missed that one. But all right, so Veely's going to Texas, and then I saw Guerrero was interviewing. Where was he interviewing? It wasn't Texas.
It wasn't Texas. What was it? I want to say Houston, but that doesn't sound right.
Either way, both of them are interviewing. They potentially both are on their way out. I have a feeling they are going to be both on their way out because I don't think they'd be interviewing elsewhere if Posey had any intentions of keeping them around here. This is probably like a, hey, go, we're going to replace you anyway, so go interview. Try and make it look better for yourself. Marlins, okay. I was like, I know it wasn't the Rangers. That's all I knew. But both guys are out. and Burrell is sticking around from, at least for now, it sounds like. I don't know if they're going to go hire more assistants. I mean, technically, Veely and Burrell neither was an assistant. They were both just hitting coaches. So I don't know if maybe they're going to do, just Burrell as the hitting coach, or if they're going to get him some assistants, or what the deal is there. I know they were talking about Damon Minor potentially getting hired up as an option. He's been with Sacramento since, I think, 2016 was his first year there. So he's got a lot of track record. So I have my thoughts, but I'll kick it to you guys first. So let's hear. Yeah. Oh, and Rob just pops in Ishikawa as a possible option as well.
Ricky, you go, because the caveman rant is building up.
Got you. First thoughts for me, I think it's very clear a change was very much so needed ever since Donnie Ecker left. I think that's clear as day. Whether it's Veely's fault, Guerrero's fault, Burrell's fault, it really doesn't matter to me. You need fresh faces in there. And for me, it's whether you want to, rag on Burrell because he's not the analytics guy, that's fine. But for me, he was only there for one season. And these issues came far before Burrell came in. And ultimately, I think at some point when you're putting out below average offense, regardless of who's on the field, and you see the approach night in, night out with runners in scoring position being just absolutely dreadful, it's time to make some changes and bring in new hitters and bring in new coaching and change something up, because you just cannot continue to run the same coaches out there. For years, we had this massive coaching staff, and for some reason, we can't get the most out of our players. It's unacceptable, and it gets to the point where you just need to move on. I know a lot of guys within the Giants organization were very high on Veely. Say a lot of people have said he's a very smart guy and his analytics approach was very high level. But for me, it's ultimately we're seeing just hitters not being aggressive enough in this lineup for the last, honestly, 4 to 5 years. And I think it's time that we just find somebody who can bring in a new approach and a new mindset. So I was all for these moves. This is something I think we had wanted since probably prior to even last season. So that's pretty much where I'm at with those two guys leaving.
Yeah, all I have to say is
I'm not hearing the sound if you're playing.
Dang, I'm playing it as loud as I can. It's an applause, so whatever. Yeah, so just imagine you just heard a loud applause. Yeah, that's my reaction right there. Here's the thing. 2021 offense was pretty solid, man. Can't really complain. Under Donnie Ecker, not too bad. Donnie Ecker leaves. They plug in Golden Boy Veely, and the offense turns to with the little bird left on the tree. And it's been consistent like that ever since. And it blew my mind when, all the fans are coming out and saying, oh, it's Pat Burrell's fault. Oh, Pat the Bat, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, bro, the same offensive issues that were plaguing the team during this past 2024 season were affecting the team in 2023. And we're also affecting the team in 2022. And who is the common denominator for these last couple of years? Justin Veely. All right. And yes, the argument can be made. It's, the players, not the coaches. But isn't it the coach's responsibility to get the best production possible out of your players, not the absolute worst? So the only one you can point a finger to is Justin Veely. I'm sorry. And yes, I know you had, guys like Luis Matos and Elliot Ramos come out and they're like, hey, give credit a lot to Justin Veely. Blah, blah, blah. You really think they're going to bash their hitting coach? Like, that's obviously not going to happen. Yeah, he probably helped out to an extent, but we're looking at the team as a whole. We're not just going to point out, this one breakout season from Elliot Ramos that, mind you, wouldn't have even happened if it wasn't for an act of God with 6-7 injuries on the team ahead of him. But that's a different story. So yeah, dude, it's a no-brainer. Dude had to go. Like, he was trash. He had to go. I'm sorry. He can kick rocks. He can go to Texas. Adios. Have fun down there, man. Get out of here. Pedro, get out of here. I didn't even know what you did, Pedro. It's time to just let Pat Burrell run the show with this new coaching staff, with this revamped front office. If you want to bring up Damon Minor, he did pretty damn well with the Sacramento squad. Bring him up by all means, but it was long overdue, my guy. It was long overdue to get a change as far as the hitting coach is concerned, so we can actually see the offensive breakout from this team and these guys who are clearly talented on the roster, and just see some improvement, because I'm tired of being mediocre. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna bust out a vote for Pedro shirt.
Vote for Pedro.
Oh God. Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm not going to be as strong on Veely as Dan was, but
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people, and as a few people have mentioned, LJ in the chat mentioned it. The players aren't going to bash the guy, unfortunately. Like Dan said, for professional reasons, you just don't. Even under anonymity, I might have just butchered that, but I can't talk tonight. You don't go out and just start bashing the guys. That said, and I'm sure, like, my thing with him is I'm sure he's not necessarily a bad coach. Like, I'm sure he's done a lot for several different players, whether it's Ramos, Fitzgerald, you know, some of these other guys that came up and did well for even just a while, like Tyro or Yaz, or, you know, any of these guys. I'm sure he's helped. What's that?
I would just want to piggyback off what you just said. I'm sure he's not a bad coach, but he is Justin Veely is the Farhan Zaidi of hitting coaches.
Sure.
He's not meant to be the guy. He's meant to be a guy.
Yeah. And that could be exactly the case. Like, he should not be a guy setting a philosophy on how they're going to approach hitting in general. And it was very clear that the Giants need a just philosophical shift of what their plan is in the box, because it's been one of the worst situational hitting teams I've ever seen over the last couple of years, specifically 23 and 24. Like, these were just dreadful in those situations. And that's the biggest thing. Like, I'm sure he's done things to help people, but it's just time to make a change. The organization needs a change. Some of it could be the players. Some of it could be the front office. I mean, for all we know, Farhan Zaidi, who had his little grubby fingers and everything, probably told him, okay, we need to see more pitches. We need to, you know, work the counts and everything, and just draw more walks. And yeah, that could have easily been the case. So it might not be 100% Justin Veely, but you're either fixing it or you're allowing it to happen, and they never fixed it. So Justin Veely, it was time to go. And I wish him well in Texas or wherever he ends up. I can't, did Pat Burrell do a great job last season? Probably not. But am I going to dump a guy after 1 year when most of the issues predate his arrival? No, I'm not. He's done good work with hitters down in San Jose when he was down there. Some of these guys did a good job last season under him. I would give him more time. And Damon Minor, similar to Burrell, he was in AAA. Yes, he was probably having to enforce some of the the philosophies of Farhan in the front office and things like that. But he also was there prior to that. So I kind of have some faith that that's not necessarily like his philosophy. He's probably doing more, the good soldier. You're doing what you're told. So I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind a guy like Ishikawa, who just kind of more recently got into the hitting coach game. So I can pretty much fall right in line with you guys. Like, it was just time. It was time for a change. Like, you can't just be the organizational definition of insanity and doing the same crap every year and expecting a different result next season. So that's all I got there. That's gonna be my rant for the day.
I kept my rant at a 4 out of 10. I could have got
Yeah, one other thing I'd like to add too onto the Veely topic is, a lot of fans are worried that, losing an analytic driven hitting coach like that is really going to set the team back, since, analytics is the current trend, and as far as, front offices go, coaching goes, everything. And my thing is losing a guy like Violi isn't like it's not like he's somebody that is irreplaceable. Like analytics guys are all over the league. You can find him anywhere. He's not a rare breed or anything like that. You can still bring in an analytics driven guy like Violi was, but somebody that still comes in with a different approach to hitting and then still blend that in with a guy like Burrell, assuming that he gets kept around. My issue is just, again, the situational hitting, two strike approach, and keeping things a little bit more simple for these guys because oftentimes it's, you have a team that's bottom 10 in homers across the league and they're constantly trying to yank balls out of the yard. And then when it comes to, guys on second and third with less than 2 outs, there's zero situational hitting. There's zero approach. It's like one way or another, they're just going to go up there. They're going to look for their walk. They're going to look for one specific pitch. And if they don't get it, they're not swinging the bat. If they're looking for, a slider low and away, nope, they're not swinging at that fastball down the middle of the plate. They're looking for one specific pitch, and it's you can't just look at it that way. You have to have some kind of nuance to hitting. When it comes down to 2 strikes, you got to shorten up. And if you have a guy in third with less than 2 outs, you got to look for a pitch up and drive it into the outfield and try to get more sac flies. It's something the team just really struggled with. I mean, I think all of us were in the same boat. Every time this lineup came up with bases loaded and no outs, we were all fearful of what was going to happen next because we knew every single time it was just going to be constantly just strikeout, pop up. And just there's just no fight in the lineup. And yes, some of it is the hitters that were being put out there every day, 100%. But a lot of it is on coaching and their approach too. Like there's no excuse for guys just not swinging at very hittable pitches with 2 strikes and not protecting, plain and simple.
I think I think it was in August, I shared a stat with Cody, and the Giants were about 30% higher than the next closest team in the league in terms of watching a fastball just go right down the middle and not even attempting to swing at it. They were 30% higher than the next team. Do you know how insane of a stat that is? And it's not just through 1 month. That was through like a little over half of the season. I don't know what it ended up being at. I would love to pull that number again, but just to think about that is insanity. So that alone is a reason for dude to kick rock. So adios, brother. You won't be missed.
I'm trying to find, I don't remember who it was. I think it was like the Cleveland hitting coach, maybe, who put out like his pillars of hitting or something. Like it was like his philosophy was like 7 different, things that he preaches. And this was an analytics driven guy. And, yes, one of them is like, don't be afraid to strike out. But it was like hunt your pitch, attack fastballs early. Like this was a guy that had a legitimate plan when you're in the box. And like, yeah, you're going to fail. It's a game of failure. The best players in the world fail 7 out of 10 times at the plate. Like that's just the reality. And hitting's hard. I mean, now it's really like a lot of the best players in the world fail about 7.5 times out of 10. I mean, it's a difficult game, but this team is just terrible at moving guys over and getting them in constantly. So it just, yeah, I got sick of watching the 2-0. As George says, nothing like watching a fastball in a 2-0, 3-0, 3-1 count go by for a called strike. So many times. How many times did we see a grooved fastball? And it's just like, what are you looking for? Like, are you looking for a hanger? Like, it's a fastball down the middle. Swing at the damn thing.
I mean, bro, there was no philosophy. For all I know, with Violi being a weirdo, it's probably someone like, oh, well, if it's a left-handed pitcher and you're a right-handed hitter, you have to wait until the sun is rising from the southeast at 15 degrees, and you got a 3% wind gust coming in from the southeast, and then if you see the pitch come from a 3/4 angle, if it doesn't look like it's going to be a fastball down the middle, you watch it. You try to take that walk. That's just how the approach seemed, bro, coming up. When, like you said, with 2-0, 3-0 counts, I was like, here we go, man. So it's time for a whole, whole makeover on the offensive side of things. So it was just that I almost shed a tear when I saw that news. Tears of joy, my man.
Yeah. It's like, and I'm jealous, frankly. I have a buddy, he's a big Reds fan. I know he was watching a little bit ago, but they just hired Francona. And he's been sending me clips from like Francona's presser and all these different things where Francona's talking about hitting and doing all the little things. And, batting average matters, moving runners over matters, getting them in matters, stolen base, like all these different things. And I'm just like, dude, I'm so jealous that he's your manager. And that's an analytics driven manager. Like we can't even use the analytics as an excuse. You either have a clue or you don't, as far as I'm concerned. And some of these guys, they just don't, and they shouldn't be the ones making the philosophy. Yeah, Vili is probably phenomenal for a guy like Ramos who needed to get his launch angle a little up to get more balls airborne and not hit so many into the ground so he could utilize his power. Great, he's probably phenomenal for stuff like that, but he can't be calling the shots. So no one should be shedding tears over this. I get the media probably likes the guy, and a lot of them are saying a lot of good things about him, and that's fine. Whatever. I wholeheartedly disagree that this is going to be some huge loss.
There's a reason Giants media doesn't like me. That's all I'm saying. If you can't tell why.
It's because you tell people that the janitor at the YMCA can do the same job as far as I'm saying.
Hey, but am I wrong? That's all exactly.
I won't name who it was, but Dan got blocked for saying that by one of the people.
It's hilarious.
I'm blocked by a few of them, man.
Just a straight menace.
Bro, I've only been on X for like 4 or 5 months.
How many followers do you have on X, Dan?
I think it's like 140 now, dude. I'm getting up there.
Yeah.
Nobody has ever triggered more people with 140 followers on X.
You're not wrong, dude. Oh,
I always laugh, especially with the Bailey stuff, how you and I get like, and I'm not even brutal to Bailey, man. I'm actually like pretty toned down on that. I always laugh how anytime he like people were like off the cuff posting stuff like, this is for all the eye test people and the people that say he's not elite. And I was like, well, that's a clear shot at me. Because I'm definitely that guy. But
I'll see comments and stuff, and they're just like, that caveman guy has to be trolling. I'm like, well,
yes and no. Oh god, this is brutal. This is devolving. Let's see. All right, we've got a few people dropping some stuff in the chats. Everybody keep putting them out. Somebody get clarity. Did Cody Bellinger opt out? Did he decide to opt out, or is he still?
Not yet.
Not officially.
Okay, not yet. All right, I know he's got till 5 days after we're on.
Yes.
I think
so.
Bregman did though, right?
Yeah, Bregman's a free agent. I think he was just a free agent, unless he had like a player option at the end. I don't know.
Yeah, he should just be a free agent.
And then
I honestly don't see Cody Bellinger opting out. He's projected to make, I believe, $27 million this year, and that's a pretty good payday for him, especially given the power drop off last year. So me personally, I don't see him doing that. If he does, it would be a huge win for the Cubs because then they're going to have a lot more money to work with this year with, a couple of those high-end free agents that are going to be available, like Pete Alonso. So I think somebody actually mentioned them trying to go after Alonso in the chat earlier.
Yeah. I'm not a big Alonso fan personally for the Giants, but I think he would make Wrigley look so small. Oh my god!
Since we're on the topic,
he'd hit out of the stadium.
Too many. Since we're on the topic of players opting in and out, I have breaking news for the chat. If they didn't see this news, that the three of us were just absolutely just shocked to hear. I mean, just dumbfounded. Blake Snell opted out.
Damn. Never saw it coming.
I couldn't believe it, man.
I think my initial reaction was it took him this long. God. Yeah. Let's see.
No gatekeeping.
Josh. Let's see. Left put one in here. Hold on. I started. Matos hit a bomb in winter ball. Should they let him play during spring training to see how he develops and perform? Hell yeah. Get that guy in the lineup all the time. Give him a shot. Let him try and compete for a job. You're getting to the crap or get off the pot range for him. He's going into his last option season. That is the one advantage he has over Grant McCray. Grant McCray just got he's going to be going into his second option year since they did promote him and had him to the 40-man this year. He's got 2 more years of control, and Matos only has 1 where they can option him. So they're getting to the point where they got to figure out what he can do. For those of you keeping tabs on him in winter ball, he is absolutely crushing it down there. I think he's hitting about 350 with the 1,000 plus OPS right now. 3 homers, like 5 or 6 doubles, including one that got me a little excited the other day where he shot a liner into the right center field gap. And I was like, screw the homers. That's what I want to see right there.
Exactly.
I was just going to say, that made us so proud.
Yes. So that's all I want to see out of him is use the whole field, be the guy that be who you are. Stop trying to be something you're not. Hopefully that is something that with Burrell and, maybe it's Damon Minor or Ichikawa, whoever. And then, the guy that's now the president who y'all might remember was pretty damn good at going to right field with an opposite field approach. Maybe those guys get in Luis's ear and tell him, start using the whole field again, man. So, I would love to see him get a shot. We'll see what happens there. We kind of touched on Bellinger. I had kind of an interesting debate with some people. I kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts because I have kind of 2 thoughts on this. The question was like, who would you rather have, Anthony Santander or Cody Bellinger?
It's easy. There's only one answer here, guys. Santander.
I know who I would prefer, but I think there's a legit debate there.
There is a debate. Yeah. And I'll tell you why.
I don't think so.
Santander is obviously, the first choice. He's the power bat that you're desperately lacking. The upside with Bellinger, though, is 1, he can be your first baseman this season until Bryce is ready. He can be that bridge there. And then when Bryce is ready, he can slide into the outfield. He can take over that Yaz role, so to speak, or he can DH. And he's got speed, and he's good at defense. Yeah, he's obviously not the player that he was a few years back, but if you're looking for a quality hitter with a threat to steal, 15-ish bases, play quality defense, he can fill in on multiple positions. He can be a bridge for your potential superstar. That's the argument you can make for Bellinger. But obviously, the biggest need for the Giants is a legit power threat in the lineup. So that's why you'd want Santander.
Yeah. You want to counter on that one?
Yeah, and my thing is, I see LJ's mentioning Santander doesn't hit for average. Well, that really doesn't matter. He hit 235, which is just about league average nowadays. I hear you. I'm personally big on batting average, but the Giants aren't really in a position to get picky when it comes to big time power hitting. That would be possibly willing to come here if you overpay for them. And they, as we all know, desperately need that power hitting, and Bellinger just isn't going to give you that anymore at this point in his career. Like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, there is a huge power decline in a hitter's park last year for him. And again, he's more than likely going to stay with the Cubs and opt in and take that 27 mil this year. But Santander is one of only a few guys on the free agent market that's going to be able to provide you that kind of power. So I definitely think the Giants need to jump on that. Obviously, Bellinger gives you the defensive versatility that Santander doesn't really give you as much, but you got to get that power bat in here. And if you don't get him, you don't get Adames, you don't get Alonso, you're pretty much out of options as far as free agents go. So that's why for me, it's very easy.
Yeah. Ed, I think Santander is either 1 or 2 years older. I think he's 30, right? Belly's
Yes.
29.
Santander is a year older.
Yes.
A year. Okay. So I think, to me, what it boils down to is Belly is the safer player. Santander has the higher upside. And that doesn't mean Bellinger's upside is nothing. I mean, he's never going to be an MVP again, but
Yeah.
he still could top out as like a 4 to 5 WAR player. Like, he could be a really good player for a year. I just think Santander has like difference making potential in the lineup. Yes, the average isn't going to be great, but he's got the power that can flip a game. He's a switch hitter. He's a switch hitting power hitter, which is pretty rare. And he has huge power from both sides, which is even more rare. You just don't see a lot of that. Most of the guys, looking at you, Patrick Bailey, you got good power from one side, and then the other side, you're a slap hitter. So, yeah, I mean, Santander can be a difference maker. Bellinger, though, in this park just might be a better fit, is kind of where I look at him, is just the defensive versatility, the ability to hit for speed, hit for average a little bit. He did have a down year. He did have 18 home runs, though, still, and drove in like 78 RBIs in 130 games. So, if you get the games up to 150 range, which, yes, that's been a struggle with Bellinger. So, who knows? But if he can get to 150 games, he very well may be a guy that drives in 85, 90 runs. But, Santander has been doing it, too, for the last 3 years or so. He's been averaging 90-plus RBIs a season. So, that's kind of where I fall on it. It's just an interesting little test case because I'm like, I think Belly's safer for this team, but
yeah, I was just gonna say here's the simple way to look at it. Bellinger has the higher floor. Santander has the higher ceiling, and I don't think that's really much of an argument there for the reasons that all three of us kind of described. Now it's just up to you whether you want to, take a risk and go after a guy with a high ceiling, because I don't want to compare them because they're two total different players and one is obviously better than the other. But we took a pretty big risk with Soler, hoping to get that high ceiling out of him, and he ended up just turning into a Wilmer Flores. So,
hell, even Wilmer put up a better season than him. If we're looking at 2023, Soler was pretty brutal.
That was rough.
One other thing to consider on Bellinger, too, he has almost no power against left-handed pitching as well. He only had 4 bombs last year, so it's kind of like similar to a Jock Peterson situation as far as that goes. The only difference is he does have a decent average against lefty pitching. So,
hey, if you plug him in at first, Wade had 6 home runs all year.
Mm-hmm.
He's right just a guy that can help you. He can help you win in different ways, and that's where Santander feels like a guy that he would have, like, his contribution would have to be in the box. Like, he's not good defensively anywhere. He's more playable than a guy like Jorge Soler or Jock or, some of these other, Blake Sable, some of these guys we've seen in left field. But like his contribution would have to be extra base hits, which he's averaged a lot of them over the last few years. So, I mean, he very well could, but Bellinger is a guy that can help you win in different ways by doing more of those little things, coming up with clutch hits, getting, playing well defensively, stealing a bag. Like, he can do a lot of the little things. So it's going to come down to what Posey would want to do for the team. It was just kind of an interesting, I saw that debate the other day and I was like, that's a good question, actually. How do you think about it?
Well, here's the thing, and I'm not going to say who said it. We all know who said it, but a pretty, popular Giants insider basically said that the Giants are unlikely to retain Blake Snell because they want to focus that money essentially and upgrade the hitting department of the team. So take that with a grain of salt. You got money to play with.
Yeah. Which that comment almost feels like him kind of backtracking from his previous comment just a few weeks earlier, where he said, basically Chapman was, the biggest fish they were going to go after, and that they were essentially done as far as bigger moves go. And then now it's all of a sudden completely pivoting and saying, oh, well, just not Snell, but, we're going to try to go and upgrade the lineup. So we'll see.
That guy doesn't like me either.
Mr. Chicken Strip.
Rob asked, do we know what Santander will sign for? I don't.
I haven't
he's
seen
gonna
any
be
predictions.
30. I would lean like 4 or 5 years. I don't think he's going to get a super long-term deal.
100, 120 maybe.
Yeah. Like, I think he'll average, like what did Brandon Nimmo average on his? Like 21, 22?
Something like that.
But he was like an 8-year deal.
Granted.
Probably 20 or so, if I had to guess. It's tough. And Bellinger, I think, like Ricky said, the Cubs would be happy if he backed out of his deal. The only reason I could see him is because I do think he could probably get a 5-year deal at his age, maybe even a 6-year deal. And he might just want the long-term stability. At some point, a lot of these guys want to sign that longer-term deal just to have, be set and be secure and, not have to worry about it going forward. So I could see it. Who gets more, Teoscar or Santander? I think Teoscar gets more. I think he gets a higher AAV. I don't know if he gets more years.
Teoscar isn't leaving LA. I'm sorry, he's not leaving LA.
Yeah, it just is what it is.
Christian Walker would be a good target if we didn't have Bryce Eldridge in the system.
Yeah. All right, so Rob asks, what do you guys think of adding solid players to lengthen the lineup over big name splash? I like the idea of Walker, Kim, O'Neill, trade for a Simeon. I like Christian Walker. I question what the fit is. And when I say that, I mean he's going to probably get a multi-year contract. And I don't know how I feel about getting someone to play first base. It's pretty much exclusively a first baseman for more than one season.
He's too good defensively.
And this is where we've talked about it in the past. Like, he's too good defensively. And that, yes, that can be a problem because you can't justifiably go play Bryce Eldridge at first base over him. So you leave him in the DH, and that's not what's in the best interest of developing Bryce long term. So to me, like, if you can get him on a 1-year deal, I'd be all for it. But I struggle with it on a multi-year deal. I really like him. He's probably my favorite option of the first baseman on the market. I just don't know what the fit looks like as far as like going forward beyond 2025. Kim, I think we've all said like he would do good things. Like, he does bring a lot of good things to the table, but with the shoulder injury, I'm just not a fan. O'Neill would be a solid pickup. And Simeon, this is one where I would have loved them signing him to the contract he got 3 years ago. I don't want him now. Because I don't want a 34-year-old second baseman that at any moment his production could just fall off a cliff. Now, if you told me Texas is going to take a bunch of that money back, then maybe I think about it a little harder. But like, I'm not a believer in. You're basically taking the deal that you should have given him 3 years ago without getting the prime years out of him. Yeah. So at that point, I don't want it. So.
Yeah, and going back on some of these contracts real quick, I was just looking up some of the current projections, and Santander, it's looking like more of anywhere from a 3 to 5 year deal in the $100 to $150 million range. So like I said, that's with where the Giants are at financially, that should not be breaking the bank by any means, and that should leave plenty of room to do several other things. The Giants really do not have a bunch of long-term financial commitments. Christian Walker, he's somebody I kind of brought up before in the past, and I think he could be a good fit. I don't know that he would want to come here, but he is going to be 34. So a guy at his age, he's probably only getting like a 2 to 3 year deal. Kind of like Teoscar, higher average annual value. Both those guys have 30 home run power potential still. So I think honestly both those guys are attainable, but like Dan said, Teoscar, they're probably going to try to bring him back, especially considering, he's not going to tie you down financially long term. Dodgers will probably just pay up, but Christian Walker would be a great fit. And then, Goldschmidt, again, we've kind of talked about him a little bit as well. Both those guys, probably on 2 to 3 year deals, you'd be fine with that. Especially Walker, I feel like he's still, kind of hitting at a pretty high level still, where Goldschmidt's kind of showing that decline still. But, maybe he can come in on a high AAV 1 year deal and just go off, and, you just take that, and then you have Bryce start opening day the following year.
Yeah, that I think we've all been kind of, open about that. Me personally, it just feels like if you want to make a major upgrade to the roster going into the 25 season, you got to make a trade for someone. And I mean, me and Cody and have been pretty vocal about it. Ricky, I know you've chimed in on it. I think making a move to upgrade the shortstop position by landing a star in Bo Bichette would be a wonderful move that you can make. And then if you are able to lock them down while doing so, that solidifies the left side of your infield for the next 5 years easily. Then from there, you focus your attention. All right, are you going to throw Fitz or Schmidt at second base or let them duke it out in the spring? And then at first base, like you guys kind of touched on, it all depends on how quick they want Bryce to develop. If they want him to make an appearance, mid 25, or just let him get a whole year in the minors and bring him in opening day 26, then yeah, by all means, go land a Goldschmidt on a 1 year deal, like you touched on, a high AAV. Let him be that bridge into your superstar franchise player, and just, let him be the mentor and let him just rake. Say, hey, we don't want you to do anything else, but just rake when you come up in the lineup. Because then you kind of surround the heart of your lineup, the Ramos, the Chapman, with a Goldschmidt. I think that's pretty solid to start the season. So if you can construct your infield as something like that and then get creative as far as the outfield is concerned, like if you go, Ramos in left and then Lee in center, and then if you make a splash and land a Santander hypothetically in right, if you have your lineup constructing of players like that, that's a wild card team next season.
Yeah. Get an identity.
I mean, I think exactly. And that's why I'm so big on a guy like Santander over Bellinger and some of these other guys with less power potential, because when you really put together a Giants lineup for next year, you plug in Santander anywhere in the middle of the order, it completely changes things, especially with a guy like Lee already, going to be slated to be hitting more than likely leadoff. Then you're looking at, Chapman, Santander, and, Ramos, in the middle of the order, and you can live with that a lot more than, say, you don't have Santander and you don't add that power bat. Then you're looking at a bunch of guys that are all kind of in that same category, just like last year. Other than Ramos and Chapman, you had really no power. It's a bunch of guys that may hit you 10 to 15 home runs, or maybe a Yaz who hits, lightning in a bottle in the last 3 weeks of the season and hits like 7 bombs out of nowhere. It's not consistent power in the lineup. So,
I think about his 13 home runs, Ricky.
Yeah. So I don't know. Me personally, you get Walker and Santander in the same lineup in free agency. And like I said, that's not breaking the bank. That's not restricting you financially long term. And those are two very attainable guys in free agency. That completely changes the outlook on the lineup. And then you have some like actual clear-cut roles in a lineup that you can pencil in almost every single day with very little change.
Yeah. And here's the biggest thing. It's like all these ideas and suggestions that the three of us are pointing out, these are all doable moves that'll keep you well under the luxury tax. Well under.
Yeah. George asked it maybe early, but do you guys have a free agent prediction for this chat? Can you pick a free agent? One for each of you would be cool to discuss. I think everyone knows who mine would be. this point, though I don't think he's coming.
Who's
Then not
yours?
even talking about Soto. It's Willie Adames. If I could pick one guy,
He's
I
going
want
to
Willie
LA.
Adames.
He's going to LA.
Yeah. I've said it with LA. It's going to come down to what they keep getting mentioned, but they don't always follow what's expected of them. They're not. Yeah, they're always in on big free agents, but they don't necessarily. They have their weird moments where they'll not pursue a guy that everyone thought they were going to, and I could easily see that team going, "We got Tommy Edman, and we love this guy." And playing him at short. But I could also just as easily see them go, Chris Taylor's getting old and he's done. Get him out of here, put Tommy Edman in Chris Taylor's role, and then we're going to go get Willie Adames. I could see either one being a thing. And if LA doesn't get involved, then to me, there's zero reason not to go after him. But yeah, he would be my number one. Santander would probably be number two. Getting a big bat. To Ricky's point earlier, if you get a guy like Santander in the lineup, and then once Eldridge is up, you could have four guys in the middle between whatever order Ramos, Santander, Eldridge, and Chapman. That between the four of them are probably going to hit you 100 plus homers. And that number could end up being closer to 110. So it's that's very attractive to me. And my thing is even when you go back on his last, not ignoring 2024, and you go back on Santander's 2022 and 2023, I've said this in the past, he averaged 30 homers and 32 doubles a year those 2 seasons. Those were and his numbers exploded last season. But if he could do that while chipping in 85, 90 runs or 90 RBIs, then I think we would all just love that production. So I like him. Yeah.
Right.
I would disagree, Ed, with the whole Kim plus his contract is greater than Adames plus his contract, because Kim isn't going to help Bryce Eldridge. Willie Adames protecting Bryce Eldridge helps Bryce Eldridge and sets him up better for success. So, and Kim, we don't even know what he's going to be after this shoulder injury.
And there's really, again, no reason to go super cheap. The Giants are not in a position of needing to go look for, these low-cost guys on prove-it deals. They can go and spend a little bit of money. And Adames is, unless you want to prioritize front-end starting pitching, Adames has to be number one because, again, I've said this multiple times in the past, there are just not shortstops out there. So if you have a chance to get one, you go and get one, and then you can find guys in other roles. After Adames, good luck plugging in anybody else at shortstop unless you go and pull out some creative trade out. There's just not enough shortstop options. There's never going to be. That's why a couple of years ago in free agency, it was such a huge miss for the Giants to not land one of those 5 big-time starting shortstops, because guys like that just don't come around. That year was insane, having all those guys available at once.
Yeah, and here's the thing. None of us would be opposed to Kim per se, but if you're going to land a Hassan Kim, he has to be a guy, not the guy. You don't want that to be the splash accusation of your offseason. A shortstop with limited power, solid defense, great hitting, but is injured. You don't want that to be your splash accusation of the offseason. So you have to be one of the many pieces that you bring in.
I don't want to see him on any billboards or signs outside the park. Sorry, everyone. I just don't. That should not be who you're advertising, guys.
If you somehow finesse and, figure out a way to land Adames and Kim, or you sign Kim and then you make a trade for Bichette and you plug Kim in as your second baseman, I'm all on board. I am all on board for that.
Yeah. It's tough. If you got Kim and if you re-signed Snell and you signed Santander and then you add Kim, sure. I think all of us would be like, cool, he fits a need. He does do something that they lack. He has good bat control, doesn't strike out much, gets on base, steals bases. He has a little bit of pop. It's not much. He'll hit 10 to 15 home runs, but plays great defense. He does things that the team needs, but it's just, to me, there are better players out there, and that's where the attraction to a guy like Adamas falls. Is like your guys have said, like there's no reason for this team to be cheap. I don't care about the money. Go get a good player for this lineup.
Yeah, and going off of what Ed just commented, and it kind of piggies back on what Ricky said, it sucks because we missed out on a chance to land one of the premier shortstops when, like Ricky said, there's like 4 or 5 available, because I think they thought that Luciano would turn into that superstar shortstop, and they put all of their eggs in one basket hoping for that, and it didn't pan out. And now you're kind of in a situation like, well, what do? Do we roll with Fitz? He showed some flashes, but I've been very open and vocal about this to you guys. I think he's more of a utility player, plug and play, depending on a team's need. But you need a bona fide lockdown shortstop to plug in on a daily basis for the next 4 or 5 years. And there's one available on the market. Your rival wants him. It just depends who wants him more. If you want to take Adamas away from potentially going to LA, you got to be willing to fork out the money for it. Otherwise, you have to have a good fallback option.
Ooh, we got a couple of good questions in here. Yeah, and as I'm not going to go down the whole rabbit hole, but as we've touched on previous videos, the farm system is completely barren at shortstop in the immediate future. Your 2 best shortstops, starting on whatever the international signing day is, January 15th or whatever, your 2 best shortstops in your system, the only 2 guys that probably have the potential to be like everyday shortstops in the major leagues, are going to be a 16 and a 17-year-old. Actually, Johnny Level might have turned 18 by then. It'll be a 16 and an 18-year-old that are going to be in the DSL and the ACL next season. You have nobody on on the horizon at that position. And by the time those guys are on the horizon, you can kick Adamas to second base. So it's the perfect time to get a long-term deal, whether it's Bichette or Adamas. Either way, perfect time to try and land one of these guys. We're going to kind of speed round him. Would you guys keep Hicks or use him in a deal? I don't think anybody in their right mind is trading for him, so you're probably going to just get stuck using him in the pen if you are smart. We'll see. Cardinals wanting to shed payroll. Is there anyone on their roster you guys want? I saw Sonny Gray get floated around. That was actually an interesting one.
I was just going to say, I did hear Sonny Gray get mentioned, and if you lose Snell, it's not a bad idea.
It's big money due, but his cap hit or his competitive balance tax hit is lower than you're paying him, because that goes off of average, and they only paid him like $15 million the first year, and they're paying him like $30 million a year the second 2 years. So the Cardinals basically are trying to do the whole, we're going to pay the cheap year and see if someone else will take him for the last 2, which means he probably wouldn't cost an arm and a leg. And for those of you that like the analytics, I think his FIP last year was like 3.1 in Busch. So, I mean, he could be really successful in Oracle Park. I don't hate it.
Yes, Rob.
They got money.
He was.
Yeah, he was at one point or another.
Yeah, I mean, Sonny Gray is really the only one in St. Louis. If you look at anybody else that you'd even want to acquire, they're all on the cheap right now. Guys like Brendan Donovan. I personally like Alec Burleson. He's super cheap and has a ton of power. Honestly, he's really the only guy. Any of the other guys that they have that they would try to shed payroll on are very mediocre starting pitching that they overpaid for, in my opinion. Gray's really the only guy.
Hey, what about the ghost of Brandon Crawford? You need a shortstop.
He got DFA'd, man.
I thought that's why I said the ghost, bro.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they have Jordan Walker?
Yeah.
He's a guy they might try and sell on if they don't want to try and stick it out. He's got some nice potential at the bat. Like he's he's a potential buy low. Like I could see the Giants, Wisenhunt just came off of a rough year in AAA. I could see them trying to flip Wisenhunt for Walker, something like that. But yeah, not a ton. You could also look at like the Reds organization. They have a ton of infielders, guys like Jonathan India, Matt McClain. Maybe you can. I don't think they would trade McClain, for instance, but maybe you can get them to, if they were willing to talk on him, maybe you send a Harrison back. Maybe you make a deal like that. I would do that trade in a heartbeat, personally. But it's a tough one. I'm not sure if the Cardinals really have any fit.
India wouldn't be bad, and honestly, I remember Giants fans not really wanting him in the past because the Reds have kind of floated him out there a bunch of times, but Giants fans kind of pushed back on it because of Tyro Estrada. That didn't age well. Anyways, he has 2 years left on his contract, and he's super cheap and very solid offensive player. And yeah, honestly, he'd be great. You wouldn't put him at short, but you could throw him at second. And then again, like we said, you have Fitz in more of a utility role if you can find a shortstop. If not, we might be seeing a full year of Fitz at short.
Rob just put a good name out there since you're discussing middle infield. Nolan Gorman.
Dude's got huge power.
He's got massive power.
If he played 162 games versus the Giants, he might hit 90 homers.
Yeah, no kidding. And yes, like Ed said, the Cards are still very high on Gorman, but I mean, I don't know, man. If you can get I don't even know how to say Minasian, whatever. If you can get Minasian to work his magic and land Nolan Gorman, I mean, that's a potential massive power threat that you can plug in at second base, who's still very, very young.
Yeah. That'd be an interesting one. I'd be all for it.
He's really good in the show. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Ed, I want to hear why you'd rather trade Birdsong between the two. I'm just curious. But yes, I love Matt McClain. That he's a baller.
Yeah.
I would trade for that guy in a heartbeat. Outside of Ellie, he's probably the guy I would most want to trade for on the Reds. Personally. There was another one I flagged in here. George. What do you guys think about trading Harrison, Luciano, Matos, and a solid A-ball pitcher for Luis Robert Jr.?
Yes.
He would fit. He would be nice in right field.
Yes.
I mean, I'd do it. If that was the deal, I would do it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's not going to get it done, though. It's not going to get it done, unfortunately.
I'll throw in Wade and I'll throw Wade in. I'll throw Murphy in. Who else do you want?
Meckler.
I was like Lamont or Meckler, and then I was like, I don't think Dan cares either one.
I will drive Wade Meckler to the airport.
That'd be a fun car ride.
Not for him.
Oh God.
He'd hop out the car in tears.
Okay, he says, personally higher on Harrison, also having lefties against the Dodgers is a bigger advantage, in my opinion. Yeah, I get that. I understand that. I do think that they have a lot of good left-handed pitching in the system. And that's where I would lean trading from that. I know we've talked in the past. I know I'm higher on Whitman than the other two, personally. But between Wisenhunt and Harrison, it's pretty tough because they both have an elite pitch, but I do have a lot of concerns with Harrison's repeatability with his delivery, with his fast, with his command. Not to say Wisenhunt's command was perfect, but he wasn't ear-holing every other lefty that came in the box. So I struggle with that with Harrison. I don't know if he'll ever harness that. And until he develops another good secondary pitch, it's pretty tough to see him taking off like we all hope. He definitely can, but I am not afraid to trade him. And the thing I like about Birdsong above all of them is he's got 3+ pitches and 4 pitches that he'll throw in any count at any time. And I would rather roll with that guy. His command's not perfect either, but it's not as bad as Harrison's when you watch them. He's not missing by feet. So,
Amen to that.
I think, I think Birdsong is the most ready now. I think the other two definitely have to make some mechanical adjustments for sure and fine tune a couple of their pitches. I definitely am still higher on Harrison than I am Wizenhunt, just because I think that fastball is really special, and I think you can play off of that a lot easier than you can with Wizenhunt, who has more of a straight fastball. And I think Harrison's fastball, that's a little bit harder to teach than Wizenhunt's changeup. Obviously, Wizenhunt's changeup is really nice, but personally, I think that Harrison could make some small tweaks to his arm slot, whether you want to lower it a little bit and change the way he throws his breaking balls, or if you want to raise his arm slot a little bit and start changing the way he throws a couple of his pitches. I think that could make a huge difference with Harrison. And I think that could be all done in one off season. So I'm very curious to see what it looks like going into next year.
Yeah.
I think Harrison easily has the higher upside. When you can throw fastballs by people, even when it's not at 98, when you can just reach back and throw and by someone at the top of the zone, like that's an advantage. And the secondary stuff can hopefully be developed. But I mean, Wizenhunt, it's hard because that changeup might be a top 5 pitch in baseball the second he steps foot on the rubber.
Yeah,
like that's the other part of it. So I don't know. It's a very interesting one to think about, and it's one that I do think they are at the point where they need to trade one of them. And while they can, and while they have any kind of value, so I don't know who you choose. That's not for me to decide, but I do feel like they need to.
I think out of the 3 of those guys, I think Wizenhunt's by far the most likely to end up going into the pen and being a future late inning guy, like a Hader / like Devin Williams type guy that's going to come in, throw some gas. His fastball, like we said, it is going to be a little bit more straight, but that changeup playing off of it might play really well in the late innings and not having guys see him multiple times in a game. So I definitely could see him, if he sticks around, doesn't get used as trade bait, being in more of a role like that going forward.
Just let the caveman decide. That'll fix all the problems.
I feel like if you just cut his fastball and you had a cutter come in with that 2-seam or with that changeup falling away, and then just had a curveball slider or whatever he's going to throw, something that he just dump in for a strike occasionally, or occasionally bounce one just to show a different movement. I think he'd be a really good pitcher. It's just his fastball gets hit way too hard right now.
No, Rob, he was not a good hitter.
I mean, would it surprise me? No, but also like as a fallback. But yeah, it was pretty ugly. But hey, maybe if he got to hit every day and consistently, maybe he could get going. I don't know.
Imagine a universe where Bryce Eldridge chose pitching over hitting. Imagine where he'd be.
I definitely think Bryce is a lot better of a pitcher than Crawford is as a hitter. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But
I mean, if you've seen Bryce throw, dude throws gas.
Yeah. He does, but I'm just saying, imagine what kind of what we'd be talking about right now with
hopeless.
Bryce was talked about as a guy that could be like a mid-rotation starter or like mid to back of the rotation starter. Like he wasn't. Yeah. It's not like he wasn't Ohtani.
But great stuff.
Yeah, he was a guy that I think with Crawford, it was pretty clear early on that he was going to always end up on the mound. Like that was his future. Like the bat just wasn't good enough. And I mean, they talked about Bryce like he was like a 2nd-round prospect as a pitcher.
Yeah.
He had a legitimate shot if he wanted it. But I think they did the right thing with him, knowing the amount of preparation and work it goes into on both sides. Like he would have been gassed all the time. He'd have been burnt out. He would have been, people wonder why the year that Ohtani goes berserk is the year he's not pitching. Like, go figure.
He would have been as tired as Patrick Bailey in June. I had
After
to.
he ate his fourth donut. Just kidding.
I had to. I couldn't resist.
Oh God. But yeah, it could happen, but yeah, I don't know. And, Rob, I would push back on this a little bit. Like, I understood what they were going for there. I would agree 100% if he was like a top 20 pick. Tail end of the first round, you're kind of picking for upside, and he had probably the most explosive arm in that draft, or one of the most explosive arms. And if they felt like he could become a starter, it could have been, it could have been a really awesome pick. But it's you can swallow that pill a little hard or a little easier now that they drafted Wisenhunt in the second round and Birdsong in the sixth round of that same draft. And they have a couple guys like Kempner and Vogel that are potential bullpen pieces down the road that they also grabbed in that draft pretty in the third to eighth or ninth round or something like that. And legend Wade Meckler was an 8th round pick that year.
Don't say the name. Don't say that name.
So, I mean, it could end up being a decent draft overall. It's just, it seems like his peak, if he does get back, if his arm recovers fully, it seems like his peak is going to be as a late inning reliever at this point. So,
and honestly, he's a guy, I think, with the regime change, I think if he comes back and has a nice little half a season, he could absolutely be trade bait, because guys around the league know who he is for sure. Special talent. I mean, honestly, the production's been pretty good when he's been out there. It's just such a small sample size that I think he'd be a perfect trade candidate. Maybe not like the headliner in a trade, but he definitely would be somebody you could throw in with somebody else and have some value.
Can I just say this is my favorite comment of the night? You don't want to. You don't want me to.
Got a few names that we've thrown out there. Darnode. The reality is he's going to start. Like, I love the comment; it's hilarious, but he's going to end up starting. And I mean, Darnode, he's an option. I think Carson Kelly, we've talked about him. Jansen, maybe.
Jansen.
Who was the one? Furman. Can't think of his first name.
You threw that one out.
Yeah, that was the one. I'm drawing a blank on
Freddie Furman.
Freddie Furman, yeah. You get Freddie Furman, you're gonna have the best defensive group in the league by a country mile. I mean, that guy's phenomenal behind the plate, and he can hit lefties a little bit. He's not a great hitter, but he can hit lefties. He's better than league average against lefties. That's like the perfect backup for you right there. So there's some few.
Just get us a backup that can make the throw down to second base, please.
You don't like Tom Murphy's 4-hoppers?
Oh man, to start the season last year, that was some of the worst throws I've ever seen.
I think after he threw 2 or 3 balls into the outfield on that one televised spring training game, did everyone else notice how like every time a guy would steal, he would conveniently drop it in the exchange? He'd be like, "Oh no, I dropped it." When he got up.
He was scared.
He was like, "I'm not throwing a second." he had that Rube Baker syndrome going, except for the second base instead of the pitcher.
Oh,
like, dude,
Murphy.
Yeah, I can't with that. And what's even going to happen with him? I haven't heard anything at all on the Tom Murphy front.
Last I heard, it was like it was like 4 or 5 months after his injury, and they said he couldn't even get into a squat. That's the last update I saw.
And he ain't gonna retire. He'll get his $4 million to rehab.
He'd be our new bullpen catcher.
Be our new Eli Whiteside.
He'll be the first ever permanent ball dude down the left field line.
He's got
give him a little stool.
You know what, Ed? We don't have to give him a chance because they can DFA him. So he is what he is. Unfortunately, at this point, I hated the pick, or I hated the signing when they got him. All 3 of us did. getting a backup catcher that can't play defense to save his life.
Getting a backup catcher that can't catch.
Yeah, that can't catch. It's almost what I said.
And paying him like double the money anybody else in the league would pay him. He probably would have retired if the Giants didn't sign him.
He made 5 times what Joey Bart made last season. What are we doing?
All because back in 1942, he had 8 bombs in one season.
He hit 10 home runs one time in 60 games, and he's going to translate that to 160.
It's like Larry said, that's power hitting catcher Tom Murphy.
Yes, legend, Larry Legend.
The GOAT.
I just thought it was hilarious. That's how he was advertised, like all off season and all spring.
You know what? Brett Arbach, he's not a great defender back there. If he was
and he can't
defensively, he's not. He doesn't have much power. He can hit a tiny bit, but yeah, I mean,
he struggled big time in Double-A, and he was one of those guys that got thrown in Sacramento a couple of times by default because they needed a warm body up there.
Tom Murphy is good defensively next year, I will eat my shirt. Okay, I don't care about his bat. If he's good defensively, if he throws out, if he makes me get to a second hand on base runners thrown out, I will eat my shirt. All right. So confident.
It has to be that exact jersey you're wearing right now.
Yes. Not happening.
If he does that, I will buy a Patrick Bailey jersey. And these guys know that's
If Tom actually, I'm not gonna eat my shirt because that probably hurt my stomach a lot. But what would hurt my soul is if Tom Murphy throws out 6 runners next season as the backup catcher, I will buy a Tom Murphy jersey and wear it on every live stream for a year.
That's like torture.
That's worse than eating this jersey. I don't want to wear his jersey. I don't want to own his jersey. Now, after that year, it would get hung on my back wall with a pool noodle attached to the right arm. But anyway.
Whoa.
Hey, thank you, The Recovery. Dodgers World Series win hurts my soul, guys. Hope we can compete next season. Hopefully this is the first step. Go Giants. Yes. I agree on all of that. I refuse to watch any of the Dodgers World Series stuff, although I did hear someone say that the parade had like 100,000 fans, and it's like they couldn't even fill up their whole stadium after the parade. And I'm like, and they got stuck in traffic. Did you hear about the parade getting stuck in traffic? I'm like, these guys are like not used to titles. They can't get a parade right.
I won't get into details, but did you guys see the video of the Dodger fan blowing up his hand with a firework?
I did see that one.
Oh, yeah, that was rough.
Did you hear the cameraman? Hey, bro, you good? You good?
Yeah, I watched both angles of that. I was like, dude, he's not good.
Yeah.
Look at his hand.
His fingers are over there. What do you mean, are you good?
Put it in reverse, Terry.
Can of corn, I'll be fine.
Yeah, that was rough.
That was nasty, dude. But all right, I think we're gonna wrap it up. But while we have like 110 people in this right now, I appreciate all you guys. You rock. If you guys do enjoy the content, we're gonna keep doing the live streams every week of the off season. Some weeks we might not have a ton to talk about, but we'll come on here and BS for a bit.
We'll come on and just let Caveman rant for 30 minutes.
Yeah. We'll come on. We'll have some. We'll come up with something to talk about. But we're going to do these live shows every week. But if you do enjoy the content, do hit the like the video, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate it. We're closing in on 1,000. I don't know. We were at like 910 or 911 last I looked. So we're getting up there. And I appreciate you guys. It's awesome. We're going to do a giveaway. We'll announce the items at 9:50. We don't actually have that nailed down yet, so we couldn't announce it earlier if we wanted, but we'll announce them at 9:50, and then at 1,000 we'll do a giveaway on one of the live shows. So
Rob.
Oh boy.
Tim Anderson can take his glass jaw wherever, not San Francisco.
Glass jaw.
That's all I got to say. Oh, man. All right, everybody. Take it easy. We'll catch you guys next week.
All right, guys.
See ya.